So here's a strange and mysterious moment on the journey to Egypt. It happened on the way at a lodging place that Yahweh met Moses and wanted to kill him. Then Zipporah took a flint and cut off the foreskin of her son and cast it at his feet, and she said, "Surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me." So he let him alone. Then she said, "You are a bridegroom of blood because of the circumcision." Moses has just received God's calling at the burning bush. God has commanded Moses to return to Egypt and deliver Israel. Moses finally agrees to go, after giving several excuses. While on the way back to Egypt, suddenly, and honestly shockingly, the Bible says God seeks to kill him at a lodging place. The passage seems strange, but when we look deeper, here's what we find. So, Moses had neglected to circumcise his son. Circumcision was actually the sign of the covenant that God gave to Abraham. God had made it really clear that every male child needed to be circumcised on the 8th day. Failing to do this was considered a serious violation of the covenant. It was in fact spiritual rebellion. Any uncircumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. Moses, who was about to become God's representative before Pharaoh and Israel, had not fully obeyed God's covenant in his own family. In short, Moses couldn't really represent a holy God while harboring disobedience at home. God's standard for leadership is, well, really something else. God often holds leaders to a higher standard. Before Moses could be used publicly, he had to be right privately. God was not being arbitrary here. He was upholding the seriousness of the covenant. So, what happened exactly? God confronted Moses, and it's possible that Moses fell sick or even faced death directly. Moses' wife, Zipporah, realized the cause, their uncircumcised son. Zipporah quickly circumcised their son with a sharp stone or flint. After that, God relented and allowed Moses to live. Zipporah's reaction, when she called Moses a bridegroom of blood, shows her frustration or maybe even revulsion toward circumcision. That could explain why the circumcision had been delayed in the first place. Some scholars suggest Moses compromised to keep peace with his Midianite wife and her customs, but God did not allow compromise in covenant matters. So let's talk about some lessons and applications here. God really cares about private obedience. Before anyone steps into public ministry, it's important that private faithfulness is in order. Even small compromises, can turn into big spiritual obstacles over time. Leaders are definitely held to a higher standard. Moses was about to stand before kings, but first, he had to stand rightly before God. This is still true today for pastors, parents, teachers, really anyone who's leading others spiritually. Covenant faithfulness really does matter. God's covenant signs and commands are serious, and honestly, they're life-giving. We are saved by grace through Christ, but faith, calls us to walk obediently. God is patient, but he is also holy. God had mercy, but he didn't just ignore covenant breaches. His mercy is actually seen in giving Moses the chance to correct the failure right away. Even after Moses' amazing encounter at the burning bush, even after his call and commission, obedience still, mattered deeply. God looks at the heart and the life. He desires those he sends to be set apart, both in public and in private. Moses learned that God's deliverance requires holiness, and honestly, so must we. In one sentence, before God uses us greatly, he calls us to walk with him deeply.